Good afternoon and welcome to the 2021 Santa Barbara Mayoral Forum presented by the Santa Barbara and Ventura Colleges of Law. I'm Dr. Matt Niemer, the president of the Colleges of Law and the moderator of today's program. This event is the latest in a series of public forums that we have hosted over the last 5 years, where we have brought experts together, candidates together to talk about issues facing voters of California. Our Proposition Debate Series started 5 years ago. You can find some recordings of those programs on our YouTube page. Today's program is also being recorded and live on our Facebook page for the Colleges of Law. And speaking on behalf of all of us at COL, we're thrilled to have the current slate of candidates with us for this event. All 6 individuals running for mayor of Santa Barbara are with us. I'm going to read each of you off, just give you an acknowledgement. I'm actually going to read it from the ballot itself. So this is how you have submitted your names and titles that's on our actual ballot. First of all, because he joined us first, this one, and he's first in line on the ballot, want to welcome Mark Whitehurst. He's a publisher. Mark, welcome to the forum. Up next is Deborah Schwartz. She's the City Planning Commissioner. Deborah, welcome. And then we have Matt Kilrain, a small businessman. Welcome, Matt. Up next is Cathy Murillo, the mayor of Santa Barbara. Welcome. James Joyce III is up next, the small business owner. Thank you for joining us. And then rounding out our panel is Randy Rousey, a downtown business owner. Thank you again, all of you, for joining us. We have 3 rounds to our program today, and we're going to be done by 1:30. And if we're just going to cut the program short, we're still talking because I really want to get all of you back out to your day. And so we're going to be finished by 1:30. So how it's going to work is there's going to be some audience interaction to our program. We're going to have an opening question, and I'll have it randomly draw out of this hat here. Each one of you will have 2 minutes to answer the opening question. We'll run that, and then it's on to the topics. How we're going to do the topics is they're going to open a poll. The audience will have the opportunity to select what topics they're most interested in hearing from all of you about. And then we will use that poll as a guide. They take the topics in order that are of most interest. That's round 2. Round 3 is audience Q&A. So the audience should see on their Zoom feed a Q&A function. They can type in a question. But we're asking audience as well there should be a thumbs up symbol there too. If you see some questions in the Q&A, hey, I'd like to hear the candidate speak to that question. It's a really good question. I want to hear more about that. Just give that question a thumbs up, and those thumbs ups are going to guide the order that we take the questions. We're going to run that until just after 1 o'clock till the bottom of the hour. We have more time. In an opening, we can take on another topic from our list. So with that, let's get started with round number 1. And each of you are going to have 2 minutes to answer this following question. So it's a visionary question. I want you to think about this. It's January 2027. You're completing your term as mayor of Santa Barbara. What does the city of Santa Barbara look like? And how has your leadership helped make the city a better place for all who work, live, and learn here? And again, I'm just reaching into my hat, and I'm going to go first to Cathy Murillo.
Let me get situated here. So, thanks so much. I'm grateful to the Colleges of Law to put this together. I always admire people in the legal profession. I was a legal secretary myself for a little while. Love that people in law love the English language, bright, smart people. So glad to be here as your guest. So by that time, as I'm finishing my second term, the State Street Advisory Committee will have made its recommendations. So we will have already worked on our State Street corridor. The El Pueblo Viejo standard of aesthetics will be met related to the parklets and other infrastructure. We will have been successful in business retention and recruitment. We will have streamlined processes in our planning department, so it'll be easier to open a business. We'll have new transportation options downtown. We'll have more housing downtown. But moving away from State Street, because I know it's one of your other questions, we will have also reduced our carbon footprint after implementing our strategic energy plan. So we will be in a better place taking care of our city and taking care of our planet. In terms of homelessness, we will have established well-located, well-managed housing for our unsheltered, emergency beds, transitional housing, permanent housing, and we will be implementing our city plan. The county will have worked on their plan. City of Goleta has a plan as well. And then under economic development, we'll have implemented a lot of the goals in our economic development plan, diversified our economy, we'll have more high-paying jobs downtown, and we will have figured out what to do with those empty spaces downtown. Also, we'll have better public transit, and we will have implemented projects within our bicycle master plan. So people will be able to move around town more easily. And we believe in multimodal transportation. So that's what the city does. We take care of all of those big picture questions, and also just making it a wonderful place to live and work.
Time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, and that just on time. That's our timekeeper, Chris. When you hear him say, we're trying to keep these to 2 minutes. This one we can give a little bit of flexibility on because it allows you to speak to some bigger picture, but just listen for Christopher as he comes in. Ms. Schwartz, you came up next. Over to you.
Thank you. As we look towards 2027, it will be a time when, with the new mayor and council seated, there will be a reset. In terms of the dynamics between mayor and council, more collegial and constructive. There will be a new city administrator who will work in a way to lift morale, lift respect within the city, and be a bridge builder with the electeds and the community. All of this will help us develop and implement both short and long-term strategic plans that we need in every area of our city, not just downtown. And it brings together the three crises that we are now facing: homelessness on our streets, and a continued shortage of workforce, that is first responder housing, along with great economic uncertainties. All of these are very concerning to the voters at this time, and they continue to urge me to stay focused on the issues and not become distracted by petty politics. That's the role of a new mayor and council. As we look again towards that 5-year horizon, we have implemented thoughtful, strategic, enlightened policies that help us move through bringing housing downtown. That's where the densest housing belongs, but we have obstacles inside our city in working with the private sector that has built over 90% of the rental units in the city. So we need public-private partnerships that have not been pursued by our mayor and council that will bring together the for-profit and nonprofit housing development sector. Our physical environment is critical to the health and safety of our community. My Santa Barbara Safe Plan, looking at strategic planning with flexible, modernized policies that touch on the access in and out of a constrained city, that address the environmental vulnerabilities of fire, earthquake, and sea level rise. I know how to bring all of this together. I'm ready to lead day one. I'd be honored for your vote. Thank you.
Time.
I'm on mute. I appreciate it. Right on time. Up next, James Joyce, over to you.
Great, thank you, and thank you to the colleges of law for doing this. And this is a very important conversation to continue to have, particularly in within your educational sphere. So to answer the question of what does it look like in 2027 with me as mayor going out at the end of my 5-year term, not being a career politician, I'll be happily going back into public service, or excuse me, private service at that point. We'll have more people living in our downtown core. And so that means that there will be housing off of State Street. That means people will be living where they work. That means the armory facility on the east side of Santa Barbara, that property will be mitigated at that time in 2027. And probably, if I'm going to project on the timeline here a little bit, by around that time, we'll probably be starting to put the foundation in and making sure that we're able to build first of its class workforce housing for teachers. We'll have a more inclusive community because there will be more housing options for people, more diverse housing options for folks to live in. So not everyone's going to be pursuing a single family residence or just living in an apartment. We'll have various styles of housing, studio locations for artists or other technical employees. We'll have a vacancy fee for our commercial spaces, right? You'll wonder why there's not as many vacancies on the State Street or in the course of our city. It'll be because of that vacancy fee has helped fill up some of those spaces. And hopefully by 2027, we'll have dignitaries from around the globe visiting Santa Barbara to learn from what it is we did. How did we change the tone and culture of our city to be an example of how to do this thing coming out of COVID and coming out of tough economic times. And so be an example, being a role model across the country and the globe will be where our city will be with me as mayor at the end of 5 years.
Thank you. And again, right on time. Appreciate it. Up next, Randy Rousey.
Well, thanks, Matt, and thanks to the Colleges of Law. It's always comforting to know that the entire panel that you're facing is made up of attorneys. That's a great way to start my day. In 2027, State Street will be clean, very well lit, and vibrant. We would have 0 vacancies, or darn close to 0 vacancies. We used to have one of the most enviable occupancy percentages in the state at one time. Milpas would have its own design district and have its own entity formed to create the vitality that neighborhood deserves. Coast Village Road will have its organization formed, and they'll be autonomous in their own way. The homeless situation will have different approaches. It won't be the same old approaches we've been trying for years and years with no success. We won't just continually dump money into the same tried and unsuccessful programs. We'll have more bridge housing. We'll have treatment. We'll have issues of strictly enforcement downtown and vigilance, as opposed to having to try to go from bush to bush and trying to provide services remotely. We'll have more of a centralized effort along those lines. So I see a clean, vibrant community. I see a successful community in 2027. I see the De La Guerra Plaza finally coming to fruition, the new police station built and coming to fruition, the De La Guerra Plaza done. So a lot of good stuff coming up in 2027. So thank you very much.
And thank you. Kilrain, you're up next.
First and foremost, I see a safe place for children to grow up, a place where there's no longer domestic violence and a place where there's no longer child abuse. Those type of people that abuse their wives and children will no longer live in Santa Barbara. It will no longer be tolerated. I see the poor people rising to the middle class and owning a home without a bunch of roommates. I see every person born in Santa Barbara and all the people that are living here now owning their own homes, not paying rent anymore, not being ripped off by the landlords and by the city of Santa Barbara. I see Santa Barbara being the green power capital of the world, selling the world green technology and putting billions of dollars in the bank, not thousands or hundreds. I'm talking billions of dollars in the citizens of Santa Barbara's pockets. I see economic development and waterfront reformation. I see non-discrimination where people who use marijuana and people who refuse to get vaccinated are allowed to be cops and firemen and school teachers. I see the citizens of Santa Barbara owning the business of Santa Barbara and getting a dividend and a pension for living in Santa Barbara and owning the business of Santa Barbara their entire lives. I see Santa Barbara having her own currency to where people don't invest their life savings in the Santa Barbara currency, but just a small chunk of it so that we can trade among Santa Barbarians in a fair way. And I see that currency being based on the quality of life. If life sucks in Santa Barbara, then you lost a lot of money investing in that currency. But if life is good in Santa Barbara, you made money. Thank you.
Thank you. And rounding us out, Mark Whitehurst.
Thank you, Matt. I envision the city to be, we'll start at the waterfront. There will be more art, both permanent and temporary. And as you move down State Street, it will have an open feel. There'll be new architecture mixed in with the historic architecture. There'll be a relaxed, more, what would you say, comfortable feel to the downtown area. And you'll find that there will be more art there as well. And then throughout all the business districts in the city, there will be the same openness, the same green, the same clean, and the enlarged number of art. And it will be obvious that art and culture, that we are an art and culture destination, and it will be an enlarged view. There will be a web of parking that captures people before they come into the city so that the traffic is less within the core and throughout all of the movement, so that there'll be more room for bikes and mobile devices that move people quietly and easily from place to place. I see Santa Barbara as being obviously an eco destination. People will see that we are green by our businesses, by the way we embrace the ocean reserves and the mountain reserves that surround us. I see Santa Barbara as a successful, thriving city, and that the role I would have played in that would have been facilitator with the council, with a very capable staff, and a city that embraces all of these things wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Terrific responses. Thank you all for sharing your vision for the next 5 years for our city. Up next is round two. We've gotten to know the candidates a little bit. We got to know where they would go, what kind of focus they would have if they were elected mayor. And now let's get into the topics. I just launched a poll, and all of you who are with us today should now see it. And on that poll are 5 forum topics, and I'll read them off. Santa Barbara City Management, Community Policing, Housing, Homelessness, and Local Economic Development. Here they come. The results are coming in. I'm going to run this poll for another 30 seconds or so. And I think it's going to be interesting information for our candidates, because we have live voters who are with us today, maybe people that are outside the city or joining this forum because they're interested in this topic, interested in where Santa Barbara goes, because definitely a lot of the topics that we're discussing today, not just central to our city, but have regional and state and beyond implications. The polls are coming in. There's a tie right now at the top, and those that haven't completed the poll have an opportunity to tilt that tie. And while we give another minute to go, also an opportunity for participants to get involved is using the Q&A. We're not using the chat function to do questions. We're using the Q&A functions. I do see the 3 of you. There's some questions already in there. So keep populating the Q&A. We're going to get to that in round 3. And even if you don't have a question, but see one of those questions in there that you think is really interesting, you'd like to hear more about, you can see there should be a thumbs up. Give that question a thumbs up. We're going to use that to inform where we go with our questions and the order of our questions. I think we have it's emerging as a clear leader. It's now up by 10 points. And give it 30 more seconds, and then we're going to close out the poll. But I'm going to, almost everybody is submitted. So almost everybody's had the opportunity to do the poll. Okay, we're going to close out the poll. And I'm going to declare that with 36% of the vote, housing was the top topic for our participants today, for 36%. So we're going to definitely take on housing up first. And then next with 27% is homelessness. So we're definitely going to get to that topic. And then I'll just finish it out. And if we can have time to get to community policing, that'll be up next with 20% of the vote. Then it's Santa Barbara City Management with 11%, And then local economic development. Been a lot of talk about State Street, about bringing back jobs and what have you. That came in at 7%, so 5th place. So interesting data, fresh data from the field for all of our candidates. So with that, I'm going to close out the poll. I'm going to reach back into my hat, and in my hand is the first candidate. We're going to go back to you, Matt Kilrain. You're up first. And so the topic is home. And I have a question for you. You're going to have about 2 minutes. Christopher's going to be reading the time. So listen for Christopher and the time. You all been great so far on the time. But here's your question. It's going to be the same question for all 6 of you. According to a recent point-in-time count, the homelessness population in the city of Santa Barbara is around 900 individuals. How do you assess the city's current homelessness situation? And what would you do as mayor to bring down that number? I just recognize I read the homeless question out of order. That was second, but let's take that on first. I'm going to read it again. According to a recent point-in-time count, the homelessness population in the city of Santa Barbara is around 900 individuals. How do you assess the city's current homelessness situation? And what would you do as mayor to bring down that number? 2 minutes.
Okay, first of all, Mayor Murillo is not to blame for our current homeless situation. This is a state and county problem that is imposed upon the citizens of Santa Barbara, and people are really upset with Mayor Murillo for not handling it well enough, but it's not her fault that we have people living all up and down the freeway on state property. That is the state's fault. It's not Mayor Murillo's fault that the guy that paints my signs was let out of prison back in May after doing about 20 years. And then the county of Santa Barbara invited him to live at the rescue mission on Yananali Street. That is not Mayor Murillo's fault, okay? Now, it's kind of my fault for giving the guy a few bucks to stay afloat. But, you know, he's painting my signs and, you know, he has purpose. He enjoys painting my signs and he has a purpose in life when he shows up. Now, I have a problem with people giving this guy drugs and alcohol because it lowers his productivity and makes his productivity, his quality of his work is not as good when he's doing drugs and alcohol. Okay, to reduce those type of people coming here, I will say stop state, stop county. You're not imposing your problems on us anymore. Stop it, game over, done. No more state and county problems in the city of Santa Barbara. Now, for the folks that are already here, like the guy painting my sign, I say give those folks, the ones that have some hope, give them some purpose. Like the guy painting my signs, he has a purpose to paint my signs and he feels good about himself, okay? Now, we mentioned St. Mary's Seminary last night. We could turn that into a garden and put shovels in the hands of these homeless people and teach them how to grow their own food and teach them have some purpose in life to dig and plant seeds and grow food and feed each other. That's good for people.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Up next, Mark Whitehurst, homelessness.
I would start first with the mental health beds. I feel like most of the visual out of the 900, well, I'll back up. Out of the 900 that are on the street, only about 40 or 50 are really the issue in terms of the business districts. And most of them, obviously, I mean, every day I hear stories of people defecating in the street and all of the interruptions that they participate in the restaurants. And those individuals, I believe, need psychiatric care. And taking them off to jail for 24 hours or 48 hours is not the answer. And they are not the largest portion of the homeless population. So mental health beds first, and I think we're short 100, 200, 250 of those beds. Then the larger population, there's actually a number of things that are being done in terms of transitional housing, bridge housing, many tiny homes, as well as there's being an increase in beds. I think you'll find the city has been very active for a long time trying to increase those. And I would be very supportive of that as it goes on. That would be my first task, I would say. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you. Deborah Schwartz, you're up next.
Well, of the 8 cities in the county, you're correct that our city has the highest number of homeless. And our homeless population is not a single population, it's a diverse population, which means we need diverse strategic short and long-term plans. And that's what's been missing from the current mayor and council in terms of their many hours of debate at council hearings. So first and foremost, we need to prioritize and declare homelessness as a public health crisis that also connects to an economic crisis that we have coming out of the pandemic. I would say that we're behind, but I'm optimistic and we can accelerate the process of securing state and federal funding. We need millions of dollars, not 1 million, not 2 million, to effectively address homelessness and put in place strategies from proven programs from other cities that I've researched. But without this being a front and center priority for our city, I'm concerned that we're leaving so many behind. As some of you know, I have a family member homeless living on the streets in Northern California, and it's heartbreaking for a family, and it's one of the most complex, difficult issues for loved ones, for family members. But compassion alone is not the solution, which is why we have to work together. We can do this, we can do better, but we need to challenge ourselves to put in place these short and long-term proven strategies. We've not yet done that, but I know we can.
Thank you. Randy Rousey, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you. I've actually worked on a few of the point in time counts, and I think as the label says, it's a point in time. It's a dynamic population. It's not static. So that number is a number at that particular moment. But the term itself, homelessness, is overbroad and oversimplistic. It connotes that simply providing a home will solve the problem. That's not true at all. It is a very dynamic and very varied problem, as Ms. Schwartz said. What I think we need to do as a city is, first of all, establish the boundaries of public behavior. And what I mean by that is actually go and enforce the laws we have on the books that will allow us to concentrate on those folks that really, really, truly need medical assistance, mental assistance, and triage those into our programs that we have established in the counties. They've just created some more new mental health beds. I think more need to be created. And then bridge housing needs to be created. But this is a collaborative effort, not a city versus county. It's a city with county effort. And those kind of relationships have actually been weak in the past. So as mayor, I would seek to work closely with the county and with the individual departments, not form the next committee, not have the next commission, but actually go myself one-on-one with these different departments and find out precisely what we can do, where the funding goes, what we can do with the funding, and what we can really accomplish, because what we've done up till now hasn't worked. What we've done up till now has been incredibly expensive. And the last thing, we need to talk about drug prevention at a very early age. Substance and drug abuse is happening in our grade schools and our junior high schools. We need to have a focus on that. We need to make sure the next group of people that come up on the streets don't slide into that misery. And I think that's something I'd like to focus on as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Cathy Murillo, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Niemer. So what we need is homes for these folks. And if people of our income level, us on the screen, people listening to the forum right now, if we can't find housing, then people who make less money than we do, they don't have a chance. So we need people that'll have courage on the city council, political courage to say yes to projects that'll build housing for the homeless. I am that person. I ask for your vote. People who have watched me approve housing projects know that I acknowledge when a project has gone through the rigorous process that we have at the city. We have been talking about the St. Mary's site just yesterday when some people went there to take a look at it, some city folks. I didn't need to go. I know the property. The neighbors came out with picket signs, and okay, it is a high fire zone. Maybe it isn't the best place for that facility. It does have a lot of problems, by the way, but we will get that kind of opposition anywhere on the South Coast that we identify as a place for emergency beds, okay, a new shelter, transitional housing. People are sobered up through the Salvation Army, and the Salvation Army tried to open a halfway house, and there was so much opposition. So I think we need to make a transformation in our minds as a community, as a society, and then your city council has to have courage. And I disagree with Mr. Rouse that we've been failing. I looked at some numbers. Path, the shelter, they house 70 people a year on average. Safe Parking, that's people who live in their cars, they house 55 people a year. Our own CityNet, our own city collaborative, housed 108 people from January to August of this year, when our goal was 100 people per year. We have a plan also. Thank you.
Thank you. James Joyce, you get the last word on this topic.
Great, thank you. So I'm glad that you point out the point in time count of showing it's just under 1,000 unhoused folks in our city. To me, that's an obtainable number. We can address that number of individuals. I've been a proponent, and research supports the individualized approach, finding out what success looks like for an individual person who is unsheltered, and find what do we need to do as a community to provide wraparound services, security in housing, food security. What are the things that we need to provide as a community to help that person towards that success? I will point out that if you talk to any homeless service providers currently, they've pointed out that they're currently receiving more money than they've ever imagined that they would have received. And so we're getting money, and a lot of that is state and federal money. And so finding out how to allocate those funds. And again, listening to the experts say, shelter, housing, and services are what's needed to help get us out of this problem of homelessness. And so to help decrease that number of 900, provide shelters, provide housing, and provide services, right? You need all three of those things in order to address this issue. Some of the other things that are needed in our city are units, rental units, staffing, and sites to develop. And so you heard Mayor Murillo point out the St. Mary's property. It's great that conversation is happening. It's unlikely that will be the ideal spot for a shelter, but that could be part of the solution. And so looking at and keeping those conversations open of being solution oriented towards this problem is absolutely what's going to help us to put a serious dent in that number.
Thank you all. Thank you all for your responses. Thank you all again for staying within our time frame. At this pace, I think we're going to be able to get to at least the three big topics and then go over to the Q&A. On the Q&A, I see the questions are continuing to come in. So those that are with us, who have joined us, continue to put those questions in. We're not going to get to all of them. You can see there's a lot of them in there. So if you want to use the thumbs up feature, see a question you think you really want to hear our candidates speak to, give that a thumbs up, and that will help us guide what questions in the order we take them. So up next is going to be housing. Over a third of our participants wanted to hear about housing. We talked about homelessness. We're going to get into housing. I have a really three-part question, and I'll just get into it. How do you define, quote unquote, affordable housing? Question two, can the goal of affordable housing even be accomplished in a community like Santa Barbara, given the realities of supply and demand? And then lastly, what is your plan for housing and how will you make it a reality? So affordable housing, is it even possible? And how will you make a difference as a candidate? I have my first from the hat, Deborah Schwartz, you're up first.
Well, the term affordable is a relative term. So I prefer to discuss this issue in a context of workforce housing. And first and foremost, that's for our first responders, essential workers. We have firefighters, police officers, teachers, and healthcare workers who are our essential frontline workers who our city depends on. We can't function without them, and they can't afford, by and large, to live here. We also have the stresses of what's coming out of the pandemic as an all-time high cost of land and housing acquisition. So how do we address that from a city government? Partnerships are key. I've been discussing the critical approach to championing public-private partnerships, and that's because the private sector has the financial means to acquire land and go through the permitting process, whereas our nonprofit housing development organizations, Housing Authority, People Self-Help, they have access to government subsidies that the private sector doesn't. And that means they also have the ability to offer housing, mostly rental housing, to income and rent restricted individuals, which brings down the monthly cost of housing for those renters. Together, between the private sector and nonprofit housing development sector, we can bridge the two worlds of housing. Lastly, more housing has to come downtown. Yes, it's where our highest cost land is, but if we don't adjust our internal processes in the city to make them more streamlined, more responsive, more reasonable, we will not be able to get there. To do that, the majority of the 31 recommendations that a consultant's already put forward to the mayor and council last year that have yet to been fully implemented need to be fast-tracked. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy Rousey, you're up next.
Yeah, so we have to define what success looks like. We talk about affordable. What we really need is workforce housing. And I know that's a potato kind of definition, but it means a lot to a lot of different people. We have a largely hospitality-oriented community, so relatively low-wage community. But even with our higher paid people, like our public safety people, it's out of reach to buy something in here. But it's not a matter of creating the kind of housing that's going to be affordable by making it a small little box. We don't want to build a beehive in Nordstrom, for example, and call that housing, where quality of life still means so much to Santa Barbara's. We have projects in the pipeline, and I really wonder why we're not actually talking about those and talking about how to expedite those. The Staples building is a large housing project downtown. There's one up on Haley at the moment that's in the pipeline. The Sears project up there where the Sears building is something that needs a specific plan, should be pursued. One on Milpas, the Career Commuter Lot, is going to be a housing authority project. And eventually when we start the police station, the old police station lot could be a project, a place for affordable housing, maybe even a housing authority project. So we have those things in our grasp, and yet we're talking about these amorphous ideas about where we can do this and where we can do that. Let's focus and find out from the people that are developing those projects what's holding it up, what the dynamic's going to look like when it is open. Santa Barbara is a relatively built-out town. Solutions like Senate Bill 9 are not the solution. Senate Bill 9 is going to probably attack the lower and middle income neighborhoods first. And there's no restrictions on what those housing units are going to be. Are they going to be vacation rentals? Are they going to be for sale? Are they going to be for rent? It's just a plug more density into Santa Barbara. And I challenge anyone in the panel to tell me where density itself has actually made things more affordable, certainly not in places like New York, Los Angeles, or San Francisco. So we should look at what we have now in our grasp. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Kilrain, you're up next.
First of all, I totally oppose the stack and pack system. I just don't believe in high density housing. I think when you stuff too many hamsters in a cage, it leads to domestic violence. and I oppose it in every measure. I don't want to bring a bunch of violent Los Angelinos to Santa Barbara, leave them down there. We don't need any more people in time of an emergency like we're in right now. We're still in the midst of a pandemic, and we're worrying about housing all these people that are currently living in Los Angeles or San Francisco or something. We don't care about the kids that were born here. We will sell them down the river for chump change if somebody from LA will bring in more. What we do in Santa Barbara, if somebody's born here, we run that kid out of town and invite 15 new Los Angelinos to town to stuff in that kid's bedroom. Now, I oppose that whole measure. Rising tide lifts all boats. Now, the second cornerstone of my 4 cornerstone agenda is to resolve the housing crunch. The keystone amendment to my 4 cornerstone agenda is to make the citizens of Santa Barbara owners of the business of Santa Barbara. The third cornerstone of my 4 cornerstone agenda is to make Santa Barbara the green power capital of the world, in which I will give the citizens of Santa Barbara $1 billion of technology and a multi-billion-dollar business plan to back it up. This is going to put $1 billion of cash per year in the citizens' pockets. If you got 100,000 citizens at $10,000 cash per year in your pocket, that's $1 billion, okay? That's just one ordinary year. Now, if I can increase the income of a poor person by $10,000 a year, he can use that to have his own residence, especially if that person has a wife. If you're a 2-family income, and I increase your income by $20,000 a year, in addition to your current income, hopefully you'll be able to at least rent a house with your own family and not need to bring in a bunch of roommates from the internet to be preying upon your children.
Time.
Thank you. James Joyce, you have the floor.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to follow Mr. Kilrain. Housing, affordable housing. What does that look like? For me, that the definition of affordable housing, small a, is when you can spend under 30% of your monthly income on housing. Simple, right? We currently don't have that given what the median income is here in Santa Barbara. And so I think a way to help that, given the supply and demand situation that we do have here in Santa Barbara, as Mr. Rouse pointed out, we are quite landlocked here as far as our development, but diversifying our housing types. So when you're looking at shells such as Nordstrom, when you're looking at properties like Sears, what are the opportunities there? What are the things that we could do that are innovative to be able to say, provide various kinds of housing for folks? That could be dorm style housing. That could be work, live, studio housing for artists or technical workers. And when I say technical workers, imagine being a mechanic who has an apartment over your shop where you can live and work, right? That's the kind of style that we need to support in Santa Barbara, with folks growing their businesses and their families alike. We've heard comments on workforce housing. Absolutely, we need to increase that. I've got a plan to continue to work with our school district and the state to build first of its kind workforce housing for teachers and staff at the site of our current Armory building on the east side. Looking at adaptive reuse and mixed use. That location would also have mixed use, right? And so having opportunities for vocational technical education on the ground floor, and suppose that technical education is childcare, right? And so that's providing addressing multiple issues that we have in our community. And one of the other things that I've pointed out and have been doing some significant research on is the concept of a universal basic income, and how could that help the least of our community, right? And we've seen universal basic income programs. We've seen that they've worked at the pilot level in various cities across our state and country. And so currently there's $35 million on the table from the state of California to start such pilot programs to support specifically pregnant mothers and aged out foster youth. That's a key community or sector of our community that we could be supporting right now that we're not doing. And so some of those things are the things that we can be doing, but I also agree with Mr. Rouse that helping to make sure that we're keeping track of the things that are currently in play are important as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Cathy Murillo, over to you.
Housing is a basic human right, and it has always been the foundation of my public service. We definitely can produce affordable housing that is income restricted. In fact, the state requires us to keep track of the zoning and requires us to zone for all income levels. And these new laws coming down from the state are keeping an eye on our production now. So we really must create systems, permitting systems, building processes at the city where we are encouraging and allowing this kind of housing production. I do believe that we need more subsidies. The land value is high. So if we are producing housing for the homeless, for students, for young families, for single people, for working people, teachers, it does need to be subsidized so it's affordable to those income levels. And at the risk of irritating Mr. Kilrain, dense housing is the solution in Santa Barbara because we don't want to sprawl. We don't really want to build up in the foothills and take away orchards or sprawl up the Gaviota coast. So our program at the city is to build in the along the transportation corridors, urban infill areas, and we have been refining our dense housing program. We're identifying objective design standards. We're developing multifamily housing standards. So all focused on encouraging production of apartment houses. And like I said, where they are located, where we can walk and there's sustainability. I'm also interested in condominium development. It's dense and a lot of people value home ownership. And we really do need to pursue that. My support of housing production is why I'm endorsed by the Democratic Party of Santa Barbara County and the Cause Action Fund. I'm proud to have those endorsements. And I look forward to creating policies that bring us housing.
Thank you. And we'll close the topic with Mark Whitehurst.
Yes, increasing workforce / affordable housing is possible, and we will do it. It's not just mandated by the state, but our community can handle that. We have the ability because we have mechanisms like the Housing Authority. And I think if you ask, what would my plan be to expand affordable housing? It would be to work through the Housing Authority. They're in the process of building 61 units on the corner of Carrillo and Castillo. And that housing is focused on middle income. And the Housing Authority has the ability to do these targets and set these numbers. It's a planning issue. Our city needs to decide how many people it wants to have and what would be the appropriate number for affordable housing or workforce housing / And so I think that we have to be purposeful. Part of my plan would be we would have to facilitate that. My understanding is that we collect full rates from the Housing Authority when they go into a building mode. I think that there's things that the city can do to help facilitate the Housing Authority in this process of creating affordable housing. And lastly, I'd like to say that the Housing Authority has a mechanism for protecting renters. And this is something that's very important as this particular type of housing expands. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Mr. Kilrain, we're going to have at the end of this segment, we'll have 30 seconds for all of you to have an opportunity to address anything that came up in the segment too. So just give you a chance at that point. We're going to have time to do topics, a third and final topic before we go to Q&A. And with 20% of the vote, the topic was community policing. Here is the question. What is your current assessment of how the city of Santa Barbara is policed? What reforms, if any, would you champion if elected mayor? And back to my hat, up first, Randy Rousey.
Thank you. It's actually Rouse without the extra vowel on the end. But yeah, so community policing. Santa Barbara is established as a community police agency even before our former Chief Lori Luno, and even under Cam Sanchez, we had community policing. Chief Luno pushed that even further. We do things like implicit bias training. We do things that really emphasize who we are as a community, and we have restorative policing. A few of the most amazing individuals you could ever meet on our police force that work specifically with people that need services. So what will it look like in the future? I think all we can do is try to expand our amount of personnel. We had 142 foreign. We're down to 108 functional at the moment. We need to get back up there. That's for various reasons. But I think one thing that was lacking in this last go around was support from the mayor and council for our police department. And I think these people do tremendous work. I talk to some of them every day on the street because they're out there on foot these days, and they're proud and they're happy with what they do. And they've done what they can to try to do what's allowed under their purview. And they care about the community. And you ask one of these people, why did you become a policeman? And it's a job that I probably couldn't do personally. And to a person, they all say, because we really want to help people. And I truly believe that. And I think that's the spirit I'd like to maintain. But what I'd really like to do is make sure that they understand that their community and their elected officials support them and are behind them.
Thank you. Up next, Matt Kilrain, Community Policing.
Okay, first of all, I'm not sure if you're referring to community policing as something like the coalition of fathers that I'm forming to protect the community in a private measure, or if you're talking about the Santa Barbara Police Department. Now, personally, I've been through a lot with the Santa Barbara Police Department. I mean, they have saved my ass so many times on so much stuff that it's just crazy. I mean, the relationship that I have with so many of the officers in Harbor Patrol, I'm on a first name basis with many of them. Utmost respect for many of them. Now, many of them are crooked also, but many of them are very, very good people. Now, what we have to do as a society is learn to make crooked people and good people get along with each other and not hate each other. Now, if you're a person that has been having crimes committed against you and you go to the police, you're probably going to have a lot of problems, okay? If somebody's committing a crime against you, for example, you're being abused or battered or something like that, going to the police is not the right answer. You need to go to somebody private, like the coalition of fathers that I'm forming to look after our children and our women and each other, okay? Everybody who believes in carrying guns or having them at home, you need to make sure you get plenty of ammunition, make sure you got plenty of food on supply. Last night, 3 times it was brought up, the geoengineered electrical storm we had, I think 3 nights ago. They're going to be doing stuff like that down around LA, lighting the forest on fire. And as Mayor Murillo and I both gave the citizens a heads up last night to expect a lot of refugees to Santa Barbara. Now, Mayor Murillo wants to stack and pack them in. I want to send the fathers down on the 101 and block it off and stop them from coming in. Now, there's probably got to be something in between that.
Okay, thank you. Deborah Schwartz, over to you.
On today's news press front page, it broadcast the very difficult situation we have with understaffing in our police officer force. And I think this highlights a larger situation that we have that we're not facing in an enlightened way, local way, not just from national news and national tragedy. I think that mayor and council have a unique responsibility to work through the city administrator with the department chief and our sworn officers to take a fresh look at what protect and serve looks like in modern times, in a way that communicates clearly with our citizens and respects our diverse populations, and also as a sounding board back from our neighborhoods. We had, when we were fully staffed, what were called beat officers. These were officers who were on the street, walking, building relationships. Without those relationships, and with our very few officers mostly moving around the city responding to urgent calls in their cars, we have a divide that expands between our community and our police officers. So we need to get our force back up. And yes, we need to continue to evaluate our processes and practices and the culture, which I believe if we hire the right new police chief, we will be moving in that correct direction.
Thank you. James Joyce, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Niemer. So for community policing, I think Santa Barbara does a good job. And as Mr. Rouse has pointed out, that dates back with Chief Sanchez in the implementation of community policing efforts, meaning going out into the community outside of a urgent call and building those relationships, making sure that you have a sustained contact with those communities on a regular basis. And so, you know, hearing that Mr. Kilrain, he's brought up several times domestic violence, and I think he's spot on with that. We've seen an increase of domestic violence in our community. And so are there ways to mitigate that before it happens, right? Right now, the current mentality of policing is to go in when something happens. But imagine community policing taking on a mentality of going into the community to provide de-escalation workshops for families, right? That's a skill set that is not taught as you grow through youth and into adult. And so finding ways to infuse that, because that will help take the weight off of the need to call the police all the time for some of these instances, and helps free up our limited number of law enforcement officers for the more urgent calls and issues. Kind of tongue in cheek, if you're asking what policies or reform would I support, it would be to clone Chief Malakian. He is one of the, he's just recently received a Lifetime Achievement Award within, the law enforcement profession. And I've worked closely, with Chief Malakian when he was with the Sheriff's Department and the county CEO's office. And the thoughtfulness that he brings as an individual is worth infusing and infecting other law enforcement officers who may not have that. And so looking at a strong mentorship programs for law enforcement officers, similar to what happens within the CHP. CHP has a great model of mentorship within their department. And so borrowing some of those things and making sure that we're implementing them here locally. But I agree, we don't have a major problem that is exacerbated that we hear through the national conversations here. We do have a lot of good models here that are worth amplifying, and there's some things worth tweaking. But at the same time, I think there's also a need to increase the skill set within the community to help mitigate the need for calling the police all the time.
Okay, thank you. Mark Whitehurst, you're up next.
I'm in agreement. I believe we have an excellent police force, and I think we have wonderful programs that interface with our community. And we should be very, very pleased that Chief Lunau and Chief Malakian have moved this department and our community in the right direction. As the nation pauses because of the death of George Floyd, rightfully so, beginning to examine, really for the first time, systemic racism, our community also has to take a look at that and be a part of that national conversation and look at it from a community point of view. If you were to ask me about how we move forward, I would agree with some of what was said. The field of policing and the field of fire protection is changing, and their responsibilities, you take a look at their call logs, what they're doing in the community, it's shifting. And I believe our community needs to take a look at that shift and move with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cathy Murillo, last word.
Thanks. For me, this topic, it goes under the category of we're doing a good job, but we could always make improvements. City of Santa Barbara has a low crime rate. Under Chief Luno, she implemented strategies to reduce excessive use of force. She fine-tuned hiring practices to weed out people with racist tendencies or anger management issues. She was able to recruit a diverse group of recruits. Under her leadership, we had 18% of the force was female, which was really off the charts. And I believe that Chief Malekian is continuing with that. What's important is to hire police officers from this community, from Santa Barbara, who were born and raised here, so that they already have relationships with people and with families, bilingual officers. And I'm really glad that we now have body-worn cameras, and Chief Luno also banned the chokehold. So in terms of the reform related to excessive use of force, the city is in the process of, there's a commission that will make a recommendation about civilian oversight of the police department, specifically related to excessive use of force. And I believe that we can honor our police force, but also say that we don't want to happen here what happened in Minneapolis to George Floyd. And I think in Minneapolis, if you had talked to them the week before that fatal incident, they would have told you that would never happen here. So that's what we're trying to prevent here with this particular program, this system. We don't know what it's going to look like because it's still in the process of being developed. And, you know, as long as we have guns in our society, we have to have armed officers. I work on that separate from all of this gun safety, gun reform. Because when people call 911 and they're in danger of violence, they want an officer to arrive and to help them. And yes, it's important who we hire as the new city administrator, because that person will hire the new police chief. Was my time up? I wasn't sure.
We're right on time. And actually,
okay.
right on time, we're going to do it. And thank you all for all of those comments on all of our topics. So we're going to transition to our round three. And before we do so, just want to give all of you an opportunity to kind of clean up anything else that was covered in the previous three topics. If there was a point that you wanted to make that, oh God, I wanted to make that point, I'm going to give you each an opportunity to make that point. This is about 30 seconds each. So Christopher's going to set the time. We want to do 3-4 minutes tops on this. That'll allow us to transition to our audience Q&A. Last opportunity for audience. Get those questions into the Q&A. Got a lot of questions in there. So really at this point, take a look, see what questions you're most interested in. Give it that thumbs up, because I'm going to go first to the one with the most thumbs up. I think we'll have time to get to 2, maybe 3 questions from the Q&A. So pulling another name out of the hat, again, 30 seconds. Just if there's a point that you wanted to make, weren't able to get to, and or if you want to pass, you're welcome to do that too. Just by chance, Matt Kilrain, you came up first. I know you wanted to get back in, so back over to you.
Okay, I did use my last segment as an opportunity to clear up the point I wanted to make, which I will make again, is that I totally oppose the stack and pack system of bringing in all these refugees from Los Angeles, San Francisco, Bakersfield, or wherever they are. Now, Mayor Murillo and I have both given you guys the heads up that there's geo-engineered weather coming our way, okay? We're in the midst of fire season.
Time.
Randy Rouse, any point that you'd like to make, 30 seconds?
Real quick comment on our housing discussion. I think for a moment, that shelter and housing got conflated. And shelter is simply a very temporary, very immediate thing, and housing, even bridge housing, is more substantial than that. And I think that wasn't clear in the last discussion.
Thank you. Deborah Schwartz, any point you'd like to make?
Well, with Santa Barbara as my hometown, I think we have a potential very bright future for ourselves, in spite of the three crises that I mentioned. But unless there is a closer, more productive, and respectful relationship between City Hall and the community, I don't see us being able to do this in the short run, which is why that reset that I discussed is so important. But I know we can do it together. Thank you.
Cathy Murillo, 30 more seconds.
I'd like to mention that I chair the city's county affordable housing task group, and we look at all affordable housing projects, support each other, especially housing for homeless folks. We are cooperating with money coming from the state and the federal governments. And I do have the endorsement of the Goleta Mayor, Paula Perotti, and the Carpinteria Mayor, Wade Nomura, for my working in collaboration with folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Whitehurst.
I'll pass.
James, Joyce, you get the last word.
Thank you. I just would circle back to the community policing conversation and my failure to mention the Civilian Review Board. And that's an accountability measure to help. And I think that's what's essentially needed to help improve policing is that external accountability. We're on the path to that accountability, but I think we should be getting there much quicker. Thank you.
Thank you. And that completes round 2 of our forum. We're on to round 3, audience Q&A. And I really appreciate all of our audience members who submitted questions into the Q&A. And then they gave the thumbs up to the questions they were most interested in hearing. And I'm going to start with the question that got the most responses. And that it reads as follows. Bringing together residents and retail downtown has been done and promoted for years. Why has it not worked in the past? What will you do to improve the situation now? I'll read it again. Bringing together residencies and retail downtown has been done in the past. It has not worked in the past. What will you do to improve the situation now? Going back to the hat, up first. Matt Kilrain, you come up a lot.
That's all good. I like coming up first. Okay. So I assume we're talking about State Street as downtown, although as Deborah mentioned, downtown includes more than State Street. And I do support Deborah's initiative of looking at business all over Santa Barbara, which is what I do. Okay. And by the way, I oppose big business coming to Santa Barbara. Remember when franchises were not allowed to be here? I support those days when we did not bring these big businesses in to run mom and pop out of business. Now, I would like to bring mom and pop back downtown. I think it was James that mentioned mom and pop working downstairs, maybe a mechanic, a shop like fixing cars downstairs, mom and pop living upstairs. I support that system all up and down State Street. Now, they don't have to fix cars. Maybe sell shoes or sunglasses or food or whatever. I support mom and pop working downstairs, living upstairs. I do not support, big business stacking and packing 15 people in a little tiny room upstairs. I don't know where we're getting. We got to grow. Did you guys upgrade the sewer facility since the 1950s? We don't need to grow right now. After we get through this pandemic, let's talk about growing. But right now, anybody coming to Santa Barbara is pretty much bad news. You can see all these people they planted. And by the way, there's a lot of plants. I showed you guys last night in the show prep, some of the people that are following me around, casting spells on me and trying to hypnotize me. Now, those aren't the kind of people we want to invite to Santa Barbara. I could show you so many videos of people up and down State Street. I mean, these people are freaks. We do not want to be having these people imposed upon us. We need more mom and paws. We need more horses. We need more dogs. We need more kids. We need less freaks.
Thank you. Deborah Schwartz, you're up next. If anybody needs a question read again, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you. Randy mentioned some of the current projects in the pipeline, and when I speak with the applicant teams for those projects, and I hear of the risk, the financial bravery, the patience that they all have, it's remarkable to me that we have any downtown housing applications coming through the system. And the reason we have so few is because extraordinary investment is required. I mentioned that over 90% of the rental units constructed in our city have been and will continue to be constructed by the private sector. The resistance to more of our locals investing in housing development downtown, in part, is because of cost. That's why I do recommend public-private partnerships be championed by our city, as has been in other cities. But we also need to truly look inside our own house, so to speak, which is City Hall and the processes that every housing developer needs to go through in order to get a permit and construct housing, whether it's downtown or elsewhere. I nor anyone I know is looking to give a housing applicant a pass, make it so easy for them that anything gets permitted. Santa Barbara is too special for that. I think we all feel that. I certainly know those are my values and it's my commitment. But we have to do better, and we can. It needs to be a priority for mayor and council to direct the city administrator with community development to implement those changes paid for by the public from the Novak Consulting Group. We can do this, but without political courage and conviction, it's not going to happen soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Cathy Murillo.
Our city council, our planning department, city administration, we all had to make the purposeful decision to allow housing in the core of downtown, because prior to this latest awareness that we need to do something differently with the properties downtown and the housing crisis on top of it, the planning philosophy had been that State Street and the downtown core was for commercial business and not for residential. So we did that. Now we're developing those housing programs for that area. The Novak report does have a whole set of recommendations to streamline our permitting processes. Some of them have been implemented. Some of them will cost a little more money to implement. But the question also related to retail. So retail is not dead. It's just in a transition phase. So those business owners are figuring out what appeals to visitors. A lot of tourists love to come downtown and get souvenirs or other beautiful blouses that they bought in Santa Barbara. So whatever they're selling has to appeal to tourists and locals alike, or one or the other. And then what's really exciting is the Chamber of Commerce has new leadership. The downtown organization, new leadership. The Hispanic Chamber of Commerce has restarted after some years of dormancy, and they're helping small businesses actually figure out how to sell things online. There were businesses that they just waited for the people to walk through the front door. So Women's Economic Ventures, Economic Development Collaborative, there's a lot of different business serving organizations that are helping businesses transition to this new phase. So together downtown we'll have housing and thriving businesses. I really look forward to continue serving as mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy Rouse.
Thank you. Well, to kind of piggyback on what Ms. Schwartz talked about, it is a private-public partnership that's needed, and but I don't think we're going to find it in the pages of the consultant report. We're not going to find it in the hours that the ordinance committee puts in. We tried to make these ersatz ways of making things affordable, What we don't do is we don't talk to the people that actually build the stuff. We don't talk to the Tobes group. We don't sit down with Peter Lewis. We don't sit down with Jim Cannell and just say, what's it going to take to bring this project out of the ground? What we do to try to create affordability is add restrictions, which adds risk to the project. So a lot of these projects either don't come out of the ground or are abandoned altogether because they don't become financially feasible after a while. Mixed use has always been welcome downtown. And I think one of the reasons why Brian Cornell and I put together the first architect charrette was to try to discover how to take some of these old retail buildings and convert some of that into housing. And it wouldn't necessarily be affordable housing, but it would be housing nonetheless. Because people living downtown equals vitality. And we need that vitality downtown. We need to have that live work feel. But we need to quit throwing either restrictions on it, or we need to find out what it is that's going to take for somebody to take the risk of an investment. Once again, back to the private-public partnership, that's exactly correct. And that private-public partnership begins with communication, and that's where we're lacking right now. It's not going to be done in ordinance chambers. It's not going to be done with the next outside consultant. It's going to be done with our own local resources.
Thank you. James Joyce.
Thank you. So I'm going to put my citizen hat back on here for a second. And the more I keep hearing this private-public partnership, I want to try to help define that for residents and kind of what that might look like, particularly under how I envision it, right? And so when you look at what the need is specifically with housing and trying to build around the provide housing in the downtown core, a public-private partnership would look like companies like Sonos, Invoca, Entreport, Fast Spring, these kind of companies that are innovative in here and providing jobs in our community, but having challenges retaining employees because of the cost of housing. This would encourage them to come together, come to the table, put money together to invest in the kind of housing that their employees, collectively, their employees can live in. Right. And so when you're looking at an investment, it's an internal investment from the companies who choose Santa Barbara to be their home. And if they want to continue to thrive here, it's business sense to continue that investment to provide so housing can be provided for the employees to continue to do the good work that's being done here. And so I think that the need for that collaboration, that kind of co-op approach, leaning on models like that have been implemented from companies like Cottage Hospitals implemented a great program for a co-op model. But that kind of helps address the upfront expenses and the people who stand to benefit, or the organizations that stand to benefit the most from these developments are the ones that make that upfront investment. And so understanding that there is a need, and that addresses more than just the issue of housing, that also addresses these companies' concerns and challenges recruiting and retaining employees. And don't let me just leave out, just mention the companies. Our school district and other entities would be eligible to join in on that as well, to provide housing for the employees that they're looking to recruit and retain.
Thank you. Mark Whitehurst.
This particular question assumes that mixed use has not worked downtown. It has, and there's a lot of really wonderful mixed use projects downtown. People are wanting to expand that. And part of the reason it hasn't expanded is the concept that's in our city master plan that wants to avoid canyonization, where the downtown area is darkened by tall buildings. And so in the plan, density was directed towards the side streets, Chapala and Acapa and De La Vina. That was to keep our downtown open and free. Now there's this additional pressure for housing, and I think that I am committed to creative housing in our core area, but not necessarily all on State Street, and that throughout the city, mixed use and creative housing is the best way to move forward to avoid this canyonization that can take place when you try to build up in the areas that need to be open for public space. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're in the home stretch. I think we have time to do two more. We have 10 minutes left. Christopher, if we can move the clock to 1 minute for the next question and 30 seconds for our last question, I think we can get it done. These two next questions, I think, will lend itself for this. So next question, had the second most votes, is as follows. How do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process in Santa Barbara? So we're going to go back and just if you can get 1 point out, I think will keep us on schedule. Up first, Cathy Murillo.
Thank you so much. This has been the hallmark of my public service. I have always done office hours out in the community to bring government to the people. Particularly successful was doing office hours at the Eastside Library. That is genuinely a community that loves to see people there in their own library. They love their library, so do I. And it's the perfect place to come together and hear about people's concerns, parking, housing. They talk to me about the schools. I do have some relationship with the school district employees and also the school board members, City College. So you never know what you get when you have office hours. I also did them for First Thursday. And also just having an open door policy and making sure that I'm connected with various groups as well. Groups that serve our immigrant communities, going to their events and participating in everything I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Citizens involved in decision-making, Randy Rouse.
So before we did the district elections, I proposed to the plaintiffs that we do this. We still divide the city up into 6, and each district has its own community group, and that each council member would be assigned one of those community groups and actually go to them. And then every year we'd rotate districts. And that way we go out outside of City Hall and we find out what each of these neighborhoods really needs. That never came to fruition. There are some community groups, but there are districts from whom we never hear. So it's hard because people feel like we've got kind of the Fortress City Hall syndrome sometimes, when in fact we should be out in the community talking to people, because that's how we get them involved in the decision-making process. They're the ones that put us in office.
Thank you. James Joyce.
Thank you. So as I've shared earlier in the campaign, right, town halls, beyond something to engage citizens and residents beyond the 3 minutes at public comment time. And so providing biannual town halls to provide an opportunity for folks to voice what their concerns are specifically. A policy pitch competition at the end of that town hall. At the state level, we used to do something called There Ought to Be a Law campaign, and being able to implement something similar to that here at the city level, a policy pitch competition, because we have a lot of great innovators and minds here. And finally, I think that there needs to be an opportunity to implement technology. There's no reason why the city of Santa Barbara shouldn't be like other cities in the country and have a dedicated app that allows citizens to better communicate with the city. That means pointing out a pothole that needs to be filled in the street, a light that needs to be fixed, or an area that is suspected a crime house, right? And so it provides a better two-way communication utilizing technology in order to help break down that barrier. Thank you.
Deborah Schwartz.
Building bridges with the community starts with the very first priority on my website, which is a pledge, and that's for greater open communication with the community from the mayor's office. It means being responsive to all of the emails and all of the phone calls, which voters have told me they have not been experiencing. Now, Kat mentioned taking government to the people, but I believe it's a two-way street. It's the community or people or the residents bringing their interests and their needs to government. So there needs to be a more two-way form of communication. Randy's touched on this. I think there are many opportunities. We don't have time today to discuss them, but I know that there's significant room for improvement, and I know that our community members are eager for that type of leadership and true bridge building from the next mayor, and I intend to do that.
Thank you. Mark Whitehurst.
Very interesting that when the downtown the city started to look at what was happening at the promenade. They put out a survey, and I think they got 200 responses in. And when the architects wanted to take a look at this with a charrette, they had 4,000 responses. I think that the point of that is that surveys are very important, and that working with the different organizations throughout the community that specialize in some of these questions that are in front of the city, we need to survey the people that they are connected to. Also, back to what James Joyce said about an app, the city has about 19,000 email addresses. We can solicit, from the public what it is that they feel should be done with a particular issue. I do not think that city council meetings that last 6 or 7 hours are productive in this process. I think it needs to be gathered prior to those meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt Kilrain.
All right, first of all, I'm out and about in public all the time. I mean, I literally talk to hundreds of people a day. I'm on first name basis with hundreds of people every day. Everybody knows who I am. They know how to get in touch with me. By the way, if you don't have my phone number on your phone, get it off my website. Put your phone number on my phone. Everybody's welcome to join my YouTube channel. I got 2 of them because I'm always in YouTube jail, so I got to go back and forth. But Matt Kilrain and Matt BoatRat. I have very informed people subscribing to my YouTube channels, and we talk about a lot of really important stuff all the time, especially Santa Barbara. Now, most of my subscribers are outside of Santa Barbara, but I'm inviting the Santa Barbarians to my YouTube channel. Now, when I make the citizens owners of the business of Santa Barbara, they're going to be like stockholders demanding a profit, okay? If I don't produce a profit for the citizens, I expect you to get rid of me. And I expect that when the citizens are the stockholders, you're going to hold the board of directors and the president responsible to turn a profit.
Thank you. Thank you all. One last question. It's a fast one, and it gets a little bit in the weeds, but it's an important one. So we can get this done in 30 seconds each. I think we can wrap up here. And the question is as follows. What do you describe as the attributes of the ideal permanent city administrator? And if you want to talk about one attribute, all the better. And we're going to start with, you're unmuted, Matt Kilrain, back to you. You'll finish with this one.
Okay, you're talking about Brenda Gork?
Yeah.
We're talking about Brenda? Okay. I've only seen her on like YouTube or something a little bit, and I didn't attend the meeting I was supposed to attend to meet her. I don't like this. I don't care who the city administrator is. I don't like any of them without even knowing them, okay? I don't trust the position. Now, I've gone to the city administrator many times to get rid of like the harbor master and waterfront director and stuff like that. But there's a lot of crookedness within the system, and there's a lot of corruption to cover it up. I'm here to rattle cages.
Thank you. Randy Rouse, the one thing you look for in a city administrator.
It's a dynamic position. It takes somebody who is a true leader and not just a dictator. It takes somebody who has people skills and somebody who has knowledge of every nook and cranny in the city. So it's an amazing thing because they also get to follow one of the most interesting boards on the planet, which is that of city council. Good luck.
James Joyce.
In addition to kind of break down that whole notion of leadership, that sense of duty, providing that individual should have a very strong sense of duty to empower those around them as well, and a real mind and eye for inclusion. I think those 3 would provide a great stool for good leadership for a city administrator.
Thank you. Deborah Schwartz.
Innovative, open-minded bridge builder, preferably someone with both private sector and public sector experience with a track record of building high morale, high respect worthy employee environments.
Thank you. Cathy Murillo.
We're a full service city, so we need a professional city administrator with extensive experience, preferably from coastal California, because we will be dealing with sea level rise and climate change, and that person has to be a good manager of people. Thank you. And thanks for having us. Really appreciate the event.
Thank you. Mark Whitehurst.
I believe being a mediator would be the most important quality to me. And second, a loyalty and a commitment to the community as a whole.
Thank you all, and thank you for all of you for joining us. That concludes our mayoral forum. I appreciate all your comments and the civility that you engaged our topics today. And I want to acknowledge all of our participants who joined us today as well. And just one last thing, I'll send you all with just a shout out to all 6 of you. Just thank you for stepping forward. It's not easy to get into public service, to stay in the, as Teddy Roosevelt reminded us, the arena, in the spotlight, and to not just talk about what issues are facing us, but to try to do something about it. And all of you are up to that. With this forum, you have other forums. I invite the voters to continue going to these forums to make an informed decision. When the time is right, I have it right here. I haven't filled mine out yet. To mark your ballot and to get it in, and we'll get the results back on November the 2nd. Thank you all. Good day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Colleges of Law.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher.